I would like to call the January 16th, 2024 Board of Trustees meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, please call the roll.
Matt. Paula.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
Tara.
Here.
Chris is here. Marianne.
Here.
Christina.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Good.
Is Matt going to join us? Do we know?
We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been
We
heard
don't know.
from him.
Due to extreme weather conditions, the library building was closed today. This meeting of the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees will be held without a quorum of trustees physically present. As board president, I determined an in-person meeting is not prudent at this time due to dangerous wind chill temperatures. I have also determined it's not feasible due to the dangerous temperatures to have a library trustee, the library director, or the library's attorney present at the library. A verbatim recording of this meeting will be available to the public. Quickly poll all trustees that you can hear and see and participate. Dan?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay, good. The board recognizes its responsibility to provide an opportunity for anyone wishing to comment at any meeting to do so. Citizens are asked to sign in to comment, and each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board will be accommodated in accordance with the comment policy stated on the sign-in sheet. Are there any comments?
Sorry, I was muted. We did not have any public comments on the phone.
Okay, good. Okay. I have no president's report this month, so on to the director's report.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to start with a presentation from Ellers. This is our annual presentation about our investment portfolio. So I will hand that over to Tammy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Wow, my video is really looking rough. Virtual has been great this whole time around, right? And I should have asked Amy, do you have the presentation or does everyone have it on their packets of some form?
Yes, they do.
Perfect, perfect. And I don't need to go through slide by slide. I think a lot of you have been familiar with the services that Ellers provides. I am your investment professional, Tammy Olszewski. I will never ask you to repeat that last name. It's a goofy one and I married into it. So Tammy O is certainly sufficient. But we like to come and see everyone's smiling faces once a year just to check in, see how things are going, explain to you what we're seeing in the markets. Some of our reinvestment discussions will be driven based upon market fluctuations, things that are going on, economic developments that are expected, or projects that are coming down the pipeline for the library. So we try to check in a few times a year with your team as well and make sure that everyone is on the same page with what those reinvestments might look like, as well as your cash flow. And of course, once a year here, we try to get in front of the board just so that we can inform you on what we're seeing. So the packet that I put together for you really just summarizes some of the economic data that we are commonly looking at or referring to. So, you know, a couple of the things that I'll highlight for you. And you've probably seen this on the news. If you haven't, I can't imagine it'd be too much of a surprise. You know, coming out of COVID, we had seen some very high consumer price index and unemployment numbers well over that 8, you know, it's basically 8% when you look at the CPI. if we look at just the last year, so the last time I came and visited the library in April of, March of last year, April of last year, it was at 8.3. So looking, we're not quite a year ahead of time here, but looking, where we are now, it has come down pretty dramatically. So we're little over 3 right now. I think a lot of individuals in the markets, or if you're listening to the news, you may hear some varied news stories about whether this is good or bad or what that really means. Ultimately, we have seen positive economic indications, and all of that to say, from an interest rate standpoint, if you're issuing debt right now, the interest rates are starting to come down. So that's a good thing for a lot of municipal governments. If you are investing funds, one of the things that we had discussed with your team a few months ago actually is we expected some of the investment rates to come down as well. So on the other side of what goes on with municipal governments and the investment of project funds or general funds, it is going to start to impact your interest rates. Now, the good news is that we do set reinvestments so that periodically you have some liquidity, you can take advantage of rising interest rate environments, but we also try to build a maturity ladder so that protects you in some form or fashion from these steep declines in interest rates. So if you think back to 2019, we had a little bit of a peak in the market and then it dropped down to near zero over the next couple of years. And then 2022, it shot up pretty dramatically. So if we take a peek actually on slide, 4? So slide 4, I like to include this because this really just it's the Fed funds rate. So the federal funds rate, it has a downstream impact on a lot of the interest rates that you as a group may be looking at. If you think about, so back in March of 2022, those interest rates on the Fed side was about 0%. And if we look back to last March, it was 4.5. So it was a very substantial jump from that time period. And what we are seeing right now is an expectation. We're at about 5.25 to 5.5. We're seeing about a 97% expectation based upon trading activity and futures markets of that rate either remaining the same or starting to decrease over the next 6 to 12 months. So if you've heard any of the Fed governors coming out and providing any sort of summary of their meetings, or you've seen the sentiment posted or published, much of it is saying, hey, things are going well. They're taking a very cautious route. They may start to decrease rates. Nobody's going to sit back and say they're definitely going to do this or that in any set time frame. I don't have a crystal ball, but I like to say that if I were a gambling woman, I would expect rates to come down. So all of that to say that when we start looking at treasury rates and, what the pooled products or the investment rates might look like, we are anticipating a shift in those rates. We have seen it in what they consider the middle of that yield curve. So short-term rates are still very high. That includes bank money markets, short-term treasuries, your Illinois government investment pools. Those are all sticking around or above 5%. Anything in that middle, that 1, 2, 3, 5-year maturities, those have started to drop. So we've seen those come down below 5%. And then on the longer term investments, which you probably are never going to be investing in a 20 or 30 year, but we look at it just from a tactical standpoint, those are actually starting to come down. They're still hovering a little above or at that 4% mark, but I would expect that we're going to see those come down a little bit too. If you think back to last year, we were talking about this, that 3-month was about 0.40%. We were looking at 1-year rates of 1%. So we were very excited if we can get anything over that 0.30, and the 3-year was at 2%. So thinking about where things are right now, that 1 year is, we look at that orange line, that's really just a little above or at that 5%. So we are still seeing some opportunity for investments, but we're going to likely start lengthening maturity recommendations just to take advantage of yield opportunity while protecting you on the back end so that you don't have those big interest rates fluctuating year over year. The goal for us, of course, is to keep your investment safe, that principal preservation is paramount. We make sure that there's some baked in liquidity in case something catastrophic happens or you need some funds, but we also want to make sure that we're guiding you into an income position so that from a budget standpoint, you can plan for very specific predictable income. And we don't like to see these big swings, 1 year getting X amount and the next year having a big drop. So we like to keep it within a range. Now, taking a peek at page 6, this is one of the other economic items that I personally like to look at. This really is based upon gamblers. So individuals buying the futures market, I joke around that they're probably way smarter than me. They are using a lot of different software to analyze what's going on. They are basically betting on the future markets, the interest rates and where they're going. We include the spot rate, which is what we're seeing right now in the markets. We look at about a 3-month timeline. So thinking about where we're going to be in 3 months, and then we look ahead 3 years. If you look at that gray line, that's about where we expect things to be in the next few years. That certainly will change or could change between now and then, but it usually is pretty close to what we have seen historically, and these trends tend to follow suit with what we see in the forward yield curve. So all of that to say and reinforce that when we start to look at reinvestment decisions, we will start recommending that we lengthen out maturities when it's advantageous and fits within your schedules for cash flow. Now, taking a peek, if you go to, let's see here, slide 8, or page 8, I should say. One of the things that I like to highlight for everyone, and some of you may not be aware of all of the services that Ellers provides, but I think it's important that you understand where I fit into the cog essentially. So we really take you comprehensively start to finish. And part of my process is always to understand what you have going on from a cash flow standpoint, from a project standpoint, so that the investment recommendations that we're making fits within your comprehensive financial picture. We do have expertise along the entire spectrum of financial management when it comes to municipal government, whether it be debt issuance, investments, compliance with statutes and policies, as well as any economic development or projects that you have going on. So I always encourage you, if you have questions or if there's things, or if you're wondering about how I make my decisions or recommendations, just know it's not always just me. It's actually a whole team of individuals with varied expertise so that we can surround you with expertise to make those decisions in the most efficient and competent manner. So I like to highlight that for the group. And then if we take a peek at page 9, one of the things that came out of a more recent meeting with your team, and I like to always talk through what I do, oftentimes involves more than just investment recommendations. So we do track your investment policy. We want to make sure that you're compliant with state statute. We do model from a cash standpoint to make sure that from a cash and treasury management baseline, you're meeting your fund balance requirements while also maintaining liquidity as needed. But it's also going to become more and more important for districts like yourselves to be strategic with cash. And I say that because nobody's tossing a lot of extra money your way from a tax standpoint. One of the few ways that you can generate some extra revenue dollars is really by being strategic with your cash. So we did have a conversation with your group a couple months ago, and actually Sumitra was really quick to point out that a lot of what we're doing, we maybe aren't highlighting for the group. And it's important that it isn't just investments. And I really don't sell a particular product. It really is working as an extension of your team, making sure that I understand your operational or project cash forecasts. We build a plan. So your policy is the starting point, it's a roadmap. And then we work together as a team to make sure that the investments fit within your strategy as well as any plans that you have coming up. Ultimately, it's about having that sustainable income and predictability for budget purposes, but we also want to help guide you through being strategic with your cash. So it's not just sitting idle. That has become more and more important as we've seen these interest rates shift. You know, the dramatic shift upward was actually very beneficial to districts like yourselves. Even having a lot of cash was not punishment for anybody. You were seeing some really substantial rates. Now that things are coming to shift or shifting downward, I would suggest that we are very strategic with that cash, but you know, ultimately, that will definitely depend upon what your operational and strategic plan looks like over the next few years here. But all of that to say, you know, when we're thinking about policies, procedures, and how we operate, I thought it was very important that we point out we are always keeping your policies internally as well as state statutes top of mind. So page 10 is really just a summary of a couple of things that I wanted to cover today. And I'm not going to go through your policy, but the reason I had asked to make sure to actually, or Heather to just make sure you have a copy of your policy. I think it's important at least once a year for you to pull it out, take a peek at it, review it. One of the only changes that really has occurred statutorily in the last few years was the Sustainable Investment Act. So that is in your policy. We are always monitoring to see if there are changes at the state level. Your investments themselves, we also track, and we are periodically checking in to make sure you know, everything is done in a very electronic form and fashion nowadays, but it doesn't leave out complete human errors. So a lot of our systems are designed to ensure even if somebody inadvertently buys something, prime example, mutual fund ticker symbols are very similar, whether it be, say, a equity security or a, you know, bond fund. And one little digit or one letter off could actually result in something being out of compliant. And, you know, I'm not going to say it's never happened before, but the point is, if it happens, we have some measures or mechanisms to ensure that we can correct it as quickly as possible. So just know that we are operating behind the scenes to make sure that you're compliant. And then as far as your internal policies, we're always working within your team to make sure that you're compliant with those, but also making recommendations based upon industry best practices or what we're seeing in other library districts that we work with in the state. Now, your policy itself, we've talked a little bit about those objectives. In preservation of principal or safety is first. We always look to the liquidity component, making sure that you have funds when you need them. And yield is the last thing that we're ever looking at. Not that it isn't important, but I do oftentimes say it's not always about shooting for the stars and, you know, being strategic in the sense where we're trading in and out of securities, and we're not really an active manager in that sense, but it's really about making sure that we can build that predictability year over year for the library district. Our reporting, and we will go over a couple of example reports or summaries for you. Those are really designed for the district and for other municipalities. So if there's ever anything that you want to see, don't be afraid to ask about it. I can't promise the world, but I certainly can get you some data or information. If you feel that there's something that you're not getting in your monthly reports or your summaries, just let me know. And a lot of it is because our systems are designed for all of this accounting information, and there's a lot of data that we can pull out. Not many people really want to see it. So what I'm going to go over in the next couple of slides is really just a summary of some of that data. Looking at the income projections and fee updates for 2024, I'll cover that in a minute, but I thought it was very important to make sure you guys are aware. We actually haven't changed our fees or updated our fees for many, many years. In fact, over the years, we've probably decreased them in the last 13 to 15 years. But we did send out a notification last year that we are actually increasing our fees. Our fee schedule used to be about 12 to 20 basis points, and that's 0.12 to 0.20% annually. We've shifted that. It is now increasing from 0.12 to 0.25%. I did actually have a conversation with your team, and we sent this out last summer, and I didn't always think about the fact that I work with Wisconsin and Illinois. So Wisconsin operates on a calendar year. Illinois is, of course, on a fiscal year. So Sumitra was quick to request that we find a solution where we're not just raising your fees in the middle of the year. I also recognize it's very important for budget purposes. As much as I hype having you get predictable income, it's also as important on the other side to make sure you're not having a sudden increase in fees. So you won't see any fee increases until the next fiscal year, but I just want to make sure that you are aware of that change. And I'll talk about a little bit what the fees look like as well in a moment here, but taking a peek at page 11, if you're all on this page, this is a summary that we provide on a month-end basis. This really just showcases for you the various investment vehicles. So beyond just having funds invested, we like to make sure that you have a few different investment vehicles that provide you some flexibility. In the event that something catastrophic happens, it's important for you to be able to access funds as quickly as possible. One of the ways that you can do so, we don't necessarily recommend that you liquidate investments ahead of maturity. However, it is an option. One of the ways that you can do so is by identifying which investments at any given time in the market may be most advantageous to the district or cause the least risk or risk of loss. All of that to say that you have a few different investment vehicles, very low risk U.S. government treasury. Basically, we have government bonds. Those are actually backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. You have some treasury bills, which are very short-term U.S. government investments, and you have some CDs. Now, at any given time, over the years, you've probably seen some municipal debt obligations within that, or agency securities, which are government agencies. But the idea here is we like to have a nice balance of various investment vehicles to provide you that predictable income, but also get you some flexibility. When we look at the averages, so up on the top left there, you'll see the average yield is just over 5%. If we look back to last year, you were actually slightly behind that. So some of the reinvestments that we've made in the last year actually have started to tick up that income a little bit. The average maturity we've also doubled in length. So when you look at that average maturity last year, you were about 0.44. And all of that to say that your averages were under 1 year, which in a rising interest rate environment was not a bad place to be. We did shorten up maturities in many portfolios over the last 2 years. Now we're going to start extending that out. You'll hear about duration, and really duration targets focus on limiting your risk while also keeping some of that maturity so you can build in that longevity or predictability. Those average coupons are a little over 4%. All of that to say that at any point when we're buying investments, like treasury bills don't have a coupon, there is 0%. But we always are looking to keep your investment coupons pretty level. When we look at the ratings, we do have some data that we can break down each investment vehicle, but the idea is we want to make sure you are aware. Moody's and S&P are the most common ratings that we see. Those have been well above the established required minimums within state statutes as well as your policy. So we just like to report up on that for you. The fixed income totals just below that actually showcase the par value, which is the face value. That's what you receive overall when those maturities come due. The market value, which you'll see is slightly ahead of that face value, but you'll also see that cost. So those three numbers are a few different data points that we're constantly monitoring so that we can showcase for you that, your portfolio might fluctuate in value. You're going to get par value or face value at maturity, and then you can see specifically what you've actually paid for those investments as well. Right now, the unrealized gain loss on the portfolio is a little over $7,000, which is a shift from last year. Last year, we were seeing a lot of unrealized losses, which sounds scary, but as I mentioned before, if you buy and hold your investments, which we typically recommend, you'll receive that face value. So that market noise or that up and down in valuation does not have a direct impact on you unless you are liquidating something ahead of maturity. We still report on it from a government transparency standpoint, but just know it's not a direct impact unless you were to actually start liquidating holdings. The annual income in the portfolio, this is an average number or a range based upon what coupons are in the portfolio and expected cash flows. It should be just under $100,000. This could go up if you reinvest depending upon strategy, parameters, or shifts. But to give you an idea, in 2021, you had actually about $70,000 in income. So we like to keep you in that range. If we think about, and actually I did write down, what was it here? In 2020, you had $87,000 in income. And thinking about where you were, say, in 2022 with about $53,000 of income, we saw a pretty dramatic shift. You guys had pulled some funds out and now we've leveled off. I would say that, and actually looking at the next couple of pages, we'll go to page 14. So on page 14, you'll see that 2023, the year-end income was $86,000. And for 2024 on page 15, we're expecting $107,000. That's only based on coupons. It doesn't factor in any gains in the portfolio. So when we buy treasury bills or if we buy something that doesn't have an actual coupon, those forecasts don't necessarily, they don't forecast out that exact number in perfect form. So any reinvestments that you make or gains in the portfolio will actually contribute to that number being a little higher. But as a baseline, it's important for you to know from a budgeting standpoint as you head into your next fiscal year, this is the type of data we can also provide for your team so that you can plan for that predictable income. And the goal, of course, is to keep you in a solid range as well as planning for any fees that you can attribute to the underlying performance. Taking a peek at page 12, we do include some portfolio data that focuses on the distribution or the length of the portfolio, as well as the ratings. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of data that we can provide for that, but just know that we do keep the portfolio within an average range. We like to be under 3 years. Right now, your portfolio is a little shorter than we would like. You're seeing just over 1.5 years, but we would recommend starting to lift that or shift that out. Regardless, just know that you're compliant with your policies and statutes. From a performance standpoint, if you take a peek at page 13, this is important that you see the beginning value versus the ending value, as well as those gains compared to the income. So you have a little over $6,000 of gains for 2023, and that income is about $75,000. So those two together really are your net, the net benefit to you or actual gains in income in the portfolio. So the beginning value to ending value, you'll see those shifts and you'll see that you have about $7,500 in accrued income at year end. And the last thing that I really wanted to touch on for you is really just thinking about the maturities. And when I talk about extending that out, I wanted you to see why I would recommend that. And if you take a look at page 17, this is really just a graph of your maturities coming up. So we bulk loaded a lot of investment maturities in the spring of this year. And a lot of that was because we were shortening up portfolios in hopes of taking advantage of reinvestment opportunities in a rising interest rate environment. And of course, as you have potential projects coming up, these dollars will be useful for you. But now looking at 2025 and 2026, we would recommend that we start shifting some of those maturities into those 2 years so that you can maintain a little bit more of a level. When you think about these maturities, they should almost look like a ladder if you turn the page sideways. And that's really what we're hoping to accomplish. As interest rates start to come down, that will continue to build that predictability for you so that you can plan for budgets and income. But ultimately, as interest rates come down, we also can lengthen it out so you don't have to worry about that up and down over the next few years here. So really just in summary, I wanted to show you a few pieces of information, make sure that you know that as we start to make recommendations, we're looking in that 2 to 5 year range. And of course, we want to limit any idle cash when possible and keep monitoring those Fed policy changes and those rate shifts. So I covered a lot of information, but I also want to make sure you guys have time to ask questions in case anything sparked your interest as we are going through.
I have a question. This is Paula.
Paula.
Referring back to, I think it's on page 13. I was just curious. I'm just to recap, you said the interest rates are expected to start dropping a little bit, or they've maybe peaked.
We are expecting them potentially to shift upwards on the front end of the yield curve. So very short-term rates have not shifted downward as quickly as that 1 to 5 year range, but we do expect the rates to come down. And when you think about where interest rates had been over, say, 2019 through the last few years, they will shift up and down. We're still not in the highest, the peak of the interest rates were probably back in the 80s. But I think about even the early 2000, 2005 range, interest rates buying a house were around 5%, and we all got very excited about that. And the last house I bought, it was a little over 3%. And here we are, all of a sudden interest rates were well over 7% for buying a house, and people are still buying houses. So it really is just a little bit of a shift. We do see those rates going up. We see them coming down. We do expect the Fed funds rate to start to come down now that the Fed funds target is actually focused heavily on that inflation range of 2%. Now that they're getting closer to that range, we are expecting them to start lowering that Fed funds rate. So I don't know with any amount of certainty, but as I mentioned before, if I were a gambling woman, I would plan for them to come down.
So I'm relatively new to the board and the investment strategy of the library. So then when that happens, do you adjust the ratio of bonds to CDs? And I mean, do you expect the bonds to go up then, or?
That's a good question. And what I should actually have explained early on is the investments in the portfolio are traditionally fixed income. So even though the interest rate market itself will shift, and that may shift our recommendations for reinvestments, the portfolio holdings themselves will provide that predictable coupon. So that interest rate that's the average of the portfolio will not change directly. So it won't impact you day to day until you are reinvesting. So for example, the treasury market compared to CDs right now, CDs are actually a little higher on a yield basis than treasury bills. And if you're looking at ultra short term, it's an incremental difference between 0.10% to 0.15%. But we would probably recommend investing in a CD versus the treasury bill for reinvestments. It doesn't mean that I would go to the portfolio and recommend swapping out the current holdings. So when we buy the fixed income investments, you pay a fixed amount when you buy them. You get face value at maturity, and you get an income or a coupon payment while you hold the investment itself. Traditionally, with municipal investments, we would recommend that you buy it and hold it to maturity with limited exception. We do on occasion take a peek at the portfolio to see if it would be advantageous to sell something ahead of maturity and replace it with something else. But it's not always advantageous because you may end up taking a loss, which we would recommend trying to recover within the same audit year so that you don't have to report an actual loss to the portfolio. But yes, you are right. Sometimes we will shift our recommendation for, what percentage of a particular holding or type we would buy. But we wouldn't go back to the portfolio, recommend exchanging out investments in the underlying holdings.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. And of course, if I get off the call here and you have questions or suddenly something comes to mind, don't be afraid to ask. As I mentioned, I'm just an extension of your team. It's important that you feel comfortable asking me questions. You can reach out to me directly or to your team. But just know we're just a resource for you and here to guide you through some important financial decisions. So.
Thank you so much, Tammy.
Of course.
Thank you, Tammy.
I hope you stay warm and we'll chat next year, okay?
You too.
Thank you.
Chris, did you note that Matt's here? You're muted.
You're
Chris.
muted, Chris.
Yes, I did note it, 7:19. And
Oh.
thank you, John, for alerting me.
Great.
Okay, for the next part of the director's report, is the update to the strategic plan, and it's the old strategic plan that we are referring to, the one that just ended. So this is our sort of annual update on those accomplishments, but it's the final one for our previous strategic plan. Heather, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
No, not really, just that I compiled them. They were included as part of the board packet. And now is a good time if trustees have any questions or comments on what was provided in the board packet.
Comprehensive. Thank you.
Very. Actually, we've done a lot. We've accomplished a lot. It's an amazing plan.
Mhm.
Better things ahead, right?
Right.
It's nice to be able to see it all like that.
It is.
Mhm. Any questions about that before I move ahead?
Is there, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but is there any way to sort of promote this a little bit? I mean, even share parts of it on Facebook, because I don't know who just said that this was quite an impressive list, which it is. Kind of toot our horn a little bit.
Sure, we could do that. We will often compile like an annual review of what's been going on at the library. But we can certainly, make some of this public. I mean, it is public technically, but I mean, we could certainly promote some of it.
Or just, even if we're promoting a link to the document,
Mhm.
or something like that, so that interested
Yeah.
parties could see it.
Yeah, we can do that.
I would almost think, this sounds crazy, but I keep harking back to when Cynthia was on our citizens committee with our decennial report. And she really brought it to my attention how little I know about the use of social media. But if you all remember that, she did talk about TikTok. She did talk about all those things. And I think we do a pretty good job on Facebook about letting people know. And it might even be cool just to put like one of our goals and then what was accomplished on our Facebook page. It's short, it's sweet, it wouldn't have to be wordy or anything like that, but hey, look what we're doing.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we can make that happen. Any other questions or comments on the previous strategic plan? Okay. So then what's left is the department reports and the statistical dashboard. From the department reports, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. We're all very excited and happy about our new website, and I hope that
Looks
board
great.
members have had a chance to play with it. Oh, good. Good. Yeah, I think it's a huge improvement. We're all really, really happy with it. And as far as website launches go, we've had very few little, hiccups and glitches. So I'm very happy about that. Usually when you launch something like that, there are bound to be issues, that get ironed out later, but it was really minimal. And our team did a fantastic job. So very excited about that. And then also just to note that Randall Oaks has added some new programming and had a lot of increase in visitation, which I'm very excited about. Some of that had to do with also the winter reading program, which I'm sure you saw in the reports had a much bigger participation this year. So that's exciting. And then last and certainly not least or only, happy to say that we're fully staffed in the facilities department, which is something we've been trying to do for a really long time. And we went through a period where we had just no applicants at all. And now we are completely fully staffed. The new people are hired and trained, and everything is operating very smoothly. So just wanted to note that as well. And then in my report, I also noted that we had that large donation, which was a very nice surprise. And we're going to come up with some ideas for that that will be presented at a future board meeting. I think everything else pretty much speaks for itself, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the reports.
May I share something that was brought to my attention?
Please.
I got a phone call, and when you get a phone call and they tell you they don't want to give you your name, you often think, oh dear Lord, what's coming next? But actually this was a very lovely report. The woman did not want to identify herself. However, she did tell me that she got my phone number from her neighbor, or from my neighbor, actually, not her neighbor. She is the sister of a challenged adult, and they had gone to Randall Oaks, and the challenged adult saw the sign for the winter read and was all excited about it and wanted to join. And I don't know who is working at Randall Oaks. I don't know who the encounter was with, and the woman did not remember her name. But without missing a beat, the challenged adult was accepted as a kid reader and, allowed to join and went home happy as a clam. And that just warms my heart to know that our staff, it brings me tears to my eyes, actually, that our staff is willing to make those kinds of accommodations. And this woman who called me was forever grateful, because she said her sister's 60, and the young woman the younger woman is like 48. And she said her sister was just beaming and thrilled. And she asked me to pass that along. And I told her that we had a meeting tonight and that I would pass it along. So kudos to whoever it was, but what an amazing staff and flexibility and on your toes.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. That's really fantastic.
It is.
Thank you.
I really like that you called a 48-year-old a young woman. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, very young compared to me. So
Amy, are we not getting facilities in the department reports anymore?
Well, it's been sporadic, just because of things that are happening or not happening, but I can certainly add that.
Yeah, that would be great. I did look forward to reading that.
Okay. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we can move forward.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Before I call for a motion on the consent agenda, are there any items trustees would like withheld for discussion prior to approval? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve items A1A through A1K under the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. That was Paula.
Okay, motion's been made by Dan, seconded by Paula. Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. Exhibit C1. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2024-01 non-resident cards as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Tara, seconded by Dan, and is open for discussion. This is something we do every year just by statute. Yeah, Heather?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions for Amy or Heather? Right.
Just a quick comment, we actually don't have any any districts that this would apply to that are adjacent to our library district. So it is a requirement for us to be a certified library in the state of Illinois.
It's just checking a box though.
Could you
Yeah.
repeat what you just said, Heather? I didn't quite catch it.
So there's no library districts that don't have there's no unserved library districts that are up against our library district. But this is a requirement that we do every year to be a certified library.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion carries.
Exhibit C2. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the public comment bylaws update as presented.
So moved. Marianne. Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Marianne, seconded by Tara, and is open for discussion. Amy, you want to explain?
Yes, so we just needed to update this just a tiny bit, just to clean up the language a little bit. Our previous statement started with the word citizens, and one citizenship status does not disqualify them from making public comments. So just to clear that up, we changed it to meeting attendees, and then just cleaned up a little bit at the end of the policy as well. But it's very minor changes. It's just to make it a little bit more representative.
Does anyone have any questions? I think the new language sounds good. So the meaning of citizens has changed over the last 15 years.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Okay, Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion carries.
Exhibit C3. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the security cameras policy update as presented.
So moved. This is Paula.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Paula, seconded by Dan, and is open for discussion.
Okay. So this policy is one we've had for quite a while, but was really lacking in content that it needed. And so I pretty much just got rid of the old one and kept a little bit of it, but rewrote it that I think not only matches our current practices, but also covers all of the situations and protocol that we needed to. So I can answer any questions you might have, but I did run this past our attorney to make sure that all the citations and references were correct, and they are. So we have a legal green light on that.
I think security camera footage is FOIA-able, is it not?
It is, you're correct. It's considered public document or public record is probably a better way to say that. And so it is FOIA-able. We do have to keep it for at least 30 days and preserve anything that might have any kind of legal outcome or, you know, that might be requested by law enforcement or something like that. But anyway, I think that this policy addresses everything appropriately.
It's much more comprehensive. It makes a lot more sense.
Good.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Chris,
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes, Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
yes.
motion carries.
Oh. Okay. Exhibit C4. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the updated salary scale as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Dan, seconded by Tara, and is open for discussion. Amy or
Oh.
Heather, do either of you want to talk
Oh,
about?
I'm sorry. Yes. The salary scale hasn't changed that much this year. Honestly, because we didn't really need to. We had done a lot of the increases that were needed last year and the year before. And so this year we simply updated the minimum wage for our lower level position and making it compliant with the new Illinois minimum wage. And so as of January 1st, 2024, the new minimum wage is $14 an hour. But we have always put that into place in advance of the effective date so that we are well within our mandatory requirements. And so that the last increase to minimum wage will be next January 1st of 2025, in which case minimum wage will be $15 per hour. And I'll have to note that all of our employees that are in the 2NE grade are already beyond $15 per hour because they're long-term employees that have, you know, received raises over time. And so we really don't have anyone paid at $15 or even $14 per hour. It's all higher than that. So we're well within compliance. And then the only other note of interest is that 2 of those grades are empty. And I think in the future, we'll probably remove those, but we need to examine it a little more closely. So.
Makes sense.
Which grades are empty? Amy?
Oh, let me look at my,
3NE and 5.
yes, 3 and 5. Sorry. Yes, thank you, Christina.
Oh.
3
Where
and
it says
5.
empty. Where it says empty. Okay,
Right.
Yeah.
thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions about that? Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes, Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion carries.
And Exhibit C5. I'll now entertain a motion to authorize the director to enter into a 3-year contract for basic lawn maintenance with Siebert Landscape Management at a 3-year cost not to exceed $14,016.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by, was that Tara?
Tara.
Seconded by Dan and is open for discussion. Holy cow, those differences.
Yeah.
Wow.
Michael is our mystery iPhone user on the screen. And I've
Mhm.
asked him to turn on sound and video in case anybody would like to ask him more questions about this. So hopefully he'll be here in a second.
it sounds like you've been happy with them. So it's convenient that they're also the best bid.
Yes. Yes.
Can you say just what's included in just the basic? Is it just the mowing and edging kind of thing, or is it a little more all-encompassing than that?
It's a weekly mowing,
Okay,
basic. Anything else we do is extra and billable.
got it. Okay.
I mean, there's not that much to mow. It's just, it actually seems like a lot for the amount of surface area of grass and edging we have, but do they also do the plantings by the sign and everything and keep that weeded? Or is that extra?
Yes, yeah, that's extra. He'll send me a proposal for the flowers this spring.
I'm just blown away by $3,000. That's crazy.
Yeah. That is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Mark one.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory then, yeah. We've had Siebert in the past. Siebert came in the lowest. You're happy with them. So
Yes.
does anyone have any other questions?
Is this just, they charge no matter what, even if we have a drought and they don't even have to cut the grass? Or is it per visit estimate?
Well, they're basically here every Monday. And when it rains on a Monday, they come out on Tuesday.
Mhm.
It actually, I mean, as I think about this, that is a lot of money just to cut what's basically the front lawn, unless there's something I'm not aware of that they're doing. But
Well, they did leaf blowing and things like that. But Michael knows all the details.
Does that include the back area, the wooded area?
No.
No, that's Yahoo Woods back there. The township does that.
Right.
but the side, like by the dumpster side,
Yeah, out behind the shed. We do that. Or I mean, they do that.
Anything else? Okay, Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris. Yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion passes. I was just thinking how I could augment my retirement.
Mowing the lawn?
I mean, I could tell you how much I spend a month to have my mow, and it's yeah. So that's a, not that much. So
Hmm. Well, I want to thank everyone for your flexibility today. It's not very often it's 40 below out, possibly. So I
Mhm.
think we made the right decision here.
So grateful.
I want to say that I was there at 7 o'clock.
Were you? Check your
Oh,
email, man.
man.
I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't read my email.
Oops.
That'll teach you.
Yeah, it will. Or it should. It
At least
should
you
have.
charged, you
Should.
charged your car
Yeah.
battery.
Hey, Christina, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
someone brought it to my attention that we might not have said the right line number for the consent agenda. Was it through A1R or A1K?
Oh, it was, I said A1K. Do you need me to run it again?
Unfortunately, yeah, just to make us super transparent, if you could redo that one to include all the lines, that would be great.
It was wrong on my sheet. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, quite all right.
All right. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve items A1A through A1R, did you say?
Yes.
A1R, under the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
second,
Okay, motion's been made by Matt, seconded by Dan. Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Dan,
yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion passes again. May I ask a question? When writing up minutes, do we need to
Make note
write
of
it
the
up
fact that
doubly?
that happened. That's a good
Yeah,
question.
Do you have
Yeah,
to-
it needs to be noted as it happened.
So,
Did you withdraw
would
the
I
first
put it
time?
at the end of the minutes? Because I know Karen's not here, so I'm gonna try to put
No.
something for her.
Okay, well, what you would do is when we get to the part after C where it says board discussion, trustee questions, future agenda items, etc. That's where you can just note that someone noted an error on the roll call vote for consent agenda and therefore, it was voted again or something along those lines.
Okay,
But yeah, I would put it there under board discussion.
okay, and so just for clarity, I would put it in the minutes as it happened, and then under the section you said at the end, I'll restate it. And
Yeah.
put
Yes, so with the
Okay.
first time around where it says consent agenda, you would put the part that we actually voted on, which was through A1K,
Mhm.
and then,
Okay.
yeah.
So just because I kind of scribbled here, who made the motion the second time?
Matt,
Matt and Dan.
Dan, second.
Dan made the second motion and wait, Dan seconded the second motion. I have that Dan made on the first time, A1 through K, I have that Dan made the first one and that Paula seconded it. And then for
Okay.
this one, I have Matt and Dan. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I had it right.
So you don't withdraw the first motion and just strike it by withdrawing it?
I'm not.
Okay.
Amy suggested that I put it in Did you just
Christina's
have
having a
balloons
party
go
over
up in the
there.
air?
I didn't even press that. I pressed participants.
I
That was
like the
good.
balloons. Do
See
it
if I can
again.
make it happen again.
So the way I understand it, Paula, is I will report it as it happened that we
Yes.
did the approval A1 through A1A through A1K. And then that it was reported at the end and we went back and did A1A and A1R and passed it in its entirety.
Okay,
Okay?
Yeah, the minutes have to reflect, what was done at the meeting, even if it's an error, for transparency purposes.
I agree. I just wanted to make sure I had it right.
Yep.
I've never had that occur before, so.
Are there any questions from trustees or suggestions for future agenda items? Okay, then I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second,
Motion was made by Dan, seconded by Tara and Matt. Pick one.
Tara, you can have it.
All righty. Girls rule.
And since we're in Zoom, this is a roll call vote. So Chris, please call the roll.
Matt,
Yes.
Paula,
yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Chris, yes. Marianne,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
motion carries.
And we stand adjourned at 8:04 p.m. Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Stay warm, everyone.
Yep,
Have
stay
a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, take
Have a
care.
good night.
Night.
Bye.